President Trump claims he has an absolute right to pardon himself, does he?
The question of self-pardons is something I have never analyzed. It's a question that I've not written about. It's a question, therefore, that's a hypothetical question that I can't begin to answer in this context as a sitting judge and as a nominee to the Supreme Court.
This week's Senate confirmation hearings for President Trump's Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh ended without much cause for opposition optimism. Of course, to be fair, it's hard to craft the most effective response to a former presidential counsel when only a fraction of his White House record is available, even after dozens of emails from that time were released this week. And as you heard at the top, Democrat senators got no answers from Kavanaugh on whether a president can ignore a subpoena or pardon oneself, a crucial question as the Mueller investigation racks up indictments and guilty verdicts. Joining me now is conservative radio host and MSNBC contributor, Hugh Hewitt. You let me go right at it. Why would the American people be comfortable with the fact that this nominee, we've not seen but I think some say 10% of the records that could and should be made available, when we saw all of the records for other Supreme Court nominees? Whether they are a lot, it's still 10%, and we don't know what's in the other 90%. Why would we have confidence that we know the total background of the work and thinking of who may have a permanent lifetime seat on the Supreme Court?
Well, Al, good morning. I don't think they have confidence that they've got the record. Obviously, presidential privilege applies to a lot of those documents, but they have confidence in this judge who they watched for 38 hours and who has 300 plus opinions. It is a mortal lock. It is a certainty he will be confirmed. And the opposition, as you noted, is down to desperate measures, the Handmaid's Tale robing, kind of crazy performance art theater going on. And they're so desperate because you might have a president who's very voluble and as you said to Jen in the last segment, often angry, and a staff that's a little chaotic in the Woodward book. But he's very effective when it comes to putting up nominees like Brett Kavanaugh, who sailed through 38 hours of craziness up in the Senate, not down the White House, but crazy time in the Senate. And he's going to get confirmed, Al, whether or not the documents come out. I sat down with Leader McConnell on Thursday. We showed some of that interview earlier today on the network. And he is 100% certain that the judge is going to be the justice by the end of this month. 100%. It's done.
Well, the fact that he may be confirmed doesn't give comfort that he should have been confirmed. And it's kind of hard, as you described, the craziness in the Senate. It's kind of hard for people to deal solid if they are not given all the evidence. I mean, if I or you went to court and whoever was on the other side of whatever the legal argument is could only use 10% of the evidence, they're not crazy. They are just handicapped to be able to argue a real case. So how can the senators argue a case if they're not given all of the evidence on who they're looking at?
I was so disappointed in the Democrats not listening, and I thought your side would be very upset because, for example, in a colloquy with Senator Lee, Judge Kavanaugh said his favorite Federalist paper, there were 8 of them, but one of them was number 69. In that, it says the president can't be indicted, he can't be prosecuted. Alexander Hamilton said you got to impeach him, try him, remove him, and then you can have criminal process. If the Democrats had paid attention and done their job, they would have zeroed in on that and said, why are you answering hypotheticals from their team? What do you mean by 69? What about the... But they had a plan, a strategy that was flawed from the beginning, and as a result, they played right into the strength that Judge Kavanaugh brought, which is the Ginsburg standard. First articulated, I think in 1993, 3 by Justice Ginsburg, that she would give no hint, no preview of how she would rule on any single case. And he wrapped himself up in the Ginsburg standard, and because they did not listen, didn't pay attention, engaged in all this kind of crazy talk. I mean, the Senate was a lot crazier. The Senate Democrats on the Judiciary Committee were a lot crazier this week than the president was in the Woodward book or anything like that. It was just a wild show, and I think America turned it off.
Well, I don't know that anybody could be crazier than the President Woodward book, but put that aside. I think when you look at the fact that what you just said, that when this nominee, Kavanaugh, steps out after all of these hours, 39 hours, and the American people that he is nominated to sit on the Supreme Court still don't know his position on pardon, his position on whether the president can be subpoenaed, his position on whether he can be prosecuted. And the answer from your side, you is, well, he was slick enough to go and use Ginsburg. Do we really want somebody slick or somebody that's forthright and say, this is my position, because he's under the situation that is very unique in American history, where you have a president under active investigation that nominated him, and he should be forthright whether he thinks the senators asked him in a smart way or not, forthright and be clear after the 39 hours where he stands on whether the president could pardon himself, whether the president can, in fact, be prosecuted, and not have some shrewd or savvy way of getting around it and say, oh, you weren't smart enough to catch me. We're talking about the Supreme Court here.
Well, I teach this every single year, Alan. He is very, very smart and very, very competent, but it is right and proper to embrace the Ruth Bader Ginsburg standard. And it has been embraced by every previous nominee. By the way, Justice Breyer was nominated when President Clinton was under investigation, and it did not slow him down either. What matters most is the character and temperament of the judge and the decisions that they have handed down previous. And on those issues, both character and temperament, not a glove was laid on him. And the Democrats didn't even talk about his decisions. All they did was talk about, they made a strategic choice to try and turn the absence of the papers into an issue. It fails miserably every time that they try. They were not prepared to listen closely and go after him. Chuck Schumer may be under serious pressure to step aside, I think, in the new Congress, like Nancy Pelosi, because he has failed to do what Mitch McConnell is doing, lead his team effectively. And I think what you saw was the collapse of the Democratic resistance in the Senate. And I think you'll see at least 3, perhaps as many as 5 Democrats vote for Brett Kavanaugh in 3 weeks, within 3 weeks, by the end of the month. Because
we will see, but I think that what we saw is that Republicans did not produce the evidence for a trial. I think anyone going on a trial that had that kind of situation would not consider themselves victorious, but they would consider themselves having an undue advantage. But you will disagree, but as always, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Al.
President Trump attacks Nike for featuring Colin Kaepernick in their newest Just Do It campaign. Who will win this battle? Be right back.